Legendary African author Chinua Achebe was born in the Igbo town of Ogidi, eastern Nigeria in 1930. His parents, who were converts to the Protestant faith, gave him the name Albert Chinualumogu Achebe. He grew up in a home that sat at a fascinating crossroads of cultures. On one side, there was the deep, resonant world of Igbo traditions, with its rich oral histories, its complex social structures, and its vibrant spiritual life. On the other side, there was the world of the Christian church, with its hymns, its Bible stories, and its English language. This dual existence was not a point of conflict for the young Achebe, but rather a source of immense curiosity, shaping the man and the writer he would become in profound and lasting ways. This early immersion in two distinct worlds provided the foundational material for his life's work. He would listen intently to the stories told by his mother and sister, stories steeped in Igbo folklore and wisdom, and then he would go to school and read stories from a completely different tradition. He did not see one as superior to the other. Instead, he saw them as different ways of understanding the world. His name itself, Chinualumogu, which means, "May God fight on my behalf," carried a deep spiritual weight. This grounding in Igbo identity, even within a Christian household, gave him a unique perspective that would later fuel his literary revolution and his desire to tell the story of his people with authenticity and grace. His formal education further expanded his horizons, eventually leading him to the University College in Ibadan. Initially, he enrolled to study medicine, a practical and prestigious path. However, the pull of literature and the power of stories proved too strong to ignore. He switched his focus to English, a decision that meant forfeiting his scholarship, but set him on the course that would redefine African literature for the world. It was during these university years that he began to critically examine the books he was assigned, particularly those written by Europeans about Africa. He read authors like Joseph Conrad and Joyce Carey, and was struck by the distorted, one-dimensional portrayal of his people and their continent. A portrayal that was both inaccurate and deeply dehumanizing. This intellectual awakening was a pivotal moment. It was not merely an academic exercise, it was personal. He felt a growing sense of responsibility to challenge these narratives, to offer a counter-story from an African perspective. As a powerful act of self-reclamation and a quiet protest against the colonial legacy, he shed the English name, Albert, a name given in honor of Queen Victoria's husband, and chose to be known simply as Chinua Achebe. This was more than a change of name, it was a declaration of identity and purpose. He was no longer a colonial subject to be written about, but an African writer ready to seize the narrative and tell his own story in his own way. The catalyst for Chinua Achebe's most famous work, Things Fall Apart, was a profound need to correct the historical record. He was tired of seeing Africa depicted as a blank slate, or a place of mindless savagery, a continent without history or culture before the arrival of Europeans. He decided he would write a novel that showed the life of his people with dignity, complexity, and truth. He wanted to show that Igbo society, before the missionaries and colonial administrators came, was a functioning, well-ordered community with its own laws, religion, and art. The novel was not an argument, it was a portrayal. It was his answer to the condescending colonial literature that had dominated the shelves for so long, a powerful literary rebuttal that would change everything. Published in 1958, Things Fall Apart tells the story of Okonkwo, a proud and respected leader in the fictional Igbo village of Umuofia in the late 19th century. Okonkwo is a man of great ambition and great flaws, haunted by the legacy of his father, driven by a fear of weakness. Through his story, Achebe paints a detailed, intricate picture of Igbo life, its seasonal rhythms, its religious rituals, its social gatherings, and its system of justice. We see a society that is vibrant and complex, a world of proverbs and poetry. The novel's title, taken from a poem by W.B. Yeats, foreshadows the tragic collision of cultures that is about to unfold with the arrival of the first white Christian missionaries. The genius of the novel lies in its quiet, measured tone. Achebe does not romanticize pre-colonial life. He shows its complexities, including its harsh customs and internal conflicts. But he presents it from the inside, on its own terms. The arrival of the British is not depicted as a simple act of salvation or destruction, but as a complex and disruptive force that slowly and inexorably pulls the community apart. New religion challenges the old gods, new government undermines the traditional authority of the elders, and the fabric of the society begins to fray. Okonkwo's personal tragedy becomes a powerful metaphor for the wider cultural tragedy of a people whose world is irrevocably broken. The book's importance cannot be overstated. It became the foundational text of modern African literature, and was the first novel in Heinemann's influential African Writers series. It has sold millions of copies, and has been translated into more than 50 languages, allowing people all over the world to see and understand a sophisticated African society from an African point of view for the first time. The novel's final chilling paragraph, where the British District Commissioner reduces Okonkwo's epic life to a mere paragraph in his own self-important book, is a masterstroke. It perfectly encapsulates the colonial arrogance that Achebe set out to dismantle, the act of erasing a complex history and replacing it with a simplistic, self-serving anecdote. One of the most significant decisions Chinua Achebe made as a writer was his choice to write in English. This was not a simple or universally celebrated decision. In the post-colonial era, a vigorous debate emerged among African writers about the language of their art. Some, like brilliant Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, argued that to write in the colonizer's language was to remain mentally enslaved, a continuation of colonial subjugation. They advocated for a return to indigenous African languages as the only authentic medium for African literature. This debate was crucial, touching upon deep questions of identity, culture, and power, in a newly independent continent finding its voice after centuries of silence. Achebe, however, held a different and equally compelling view. He saw English as a practical tool, a language that, due to the colonial history of Nigeria, had become a common tongue that could unite a nation of hundreds of different ethnic and linguistic groups. For him, the question was not about abandoning English, but about adapting it, about making it carry the weight of his African experience. He famously said that the English language would have to be a new English, still in full communion with its ancestral home, but altered to suit its new African surroundings. He believed he could take the master's tool and use it to build his own house, a house that would stand as a testament to his own culture. This philosophy is brilliantly executed in his novels. Achebe's prose is not the Queen's English of London. It is a Nigerian English, infused with the cadence, rhythm, and spirit of the Igbo language. He masterfully weaves Igbo words, proverbs, and speech patterns into his English sentences, creating a style that is both accessible to a global audience and deeply, authentically African. A proverb in Igbo culture is the palm oil with which words are eaten, and Achebe's writing embodies this. His linguistic innovation proved revolutionary. It showed a generation of writers that it was possible to write in English without sacrificing their cultural identity, that the language could be bent and shaped to express new realities. This pioneering approach remains a core part of his legacy. He is rightly called the father of modern African literature because he provided a blueprint. He showed others how to navigate the complex terrain of post-colonial identity and how to write about their own societies with confidence and artistic integrity. Author Ben Okri noted that Achebe created a language of literature for those who came after him, tackling the immense and difficult questions of his time with an elegance and clarity that was breathtaking. His decision to write in English, far from being a compromise, became an act of powerful appropriation, creating a new literary language for a new Africa. Chinua Achebe's work remains profoundly relevant today because the issues he wrote about, the clash of cultures, the complexities of identity, the abuse of power, and the lingering effects of colonialism, are still very much with us. His novels are not historical artifacts. They are living conversations. Things Fall Apart continues to be a vital text in schools and universities across the globe, not just as a piece of African literature, but as a universal story about the human cost of cultural arrogance and the tragedy that unfolds when one society imposes its will upon another. It teaches us to look beyond simplistic headlines and to appreciate the intricate histories of people different from ourselves. His later novels, such as A Man of the People and Anthills of the Savannah, turned his sharp, insightful gaze towards the problems of post-independence Africa. He wrote with unflinching honesty about the political corruption, the military coups, and the social disillusionment that plagued many newly formed nations, including his beloved Nigeria. He was a fierce critic of bad governance and was deeply involved in the politics of his country, especially during the tragic Biafran War. Achebe believed that a writer could not be a passive observer. A writer had a moral duty to engage with the difficult realities of their society, to speak truth to power and to be a teacher for their people. His core philosophy that storytelling is a social and moral responsibility is perhaps his greatest legacy. He saw the writer as someone who must confront life in all its messy, painful, and beautiful complexity, not turn away from it. He showed us that literature is not mere entertainment, it is essential. It is how we remember our past, make sense of our present, and imagine a better future. His essays, particularly his incisive critique of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, further cemented his role as a leading intellectual who challenged the very foundations of the Western literary canon and demanded a more inclusive and honest representation of the world. Today, as we look at a world still grappling with tribalism, injustice, lack of empathy, and new cunning forms of economic colonialism, Achebe's truths feel more necessary than ever. He gave a continent its voice back in the world of letters, and in doing so gave the world a richer, more complete understanding of humanity. His stories remind us of the danger of a single narrative and the profound importance of listening to one another. The echo of his powerful voice continues to resonate, reminding us that, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Chinua Achebe was the lion's historian. Have you experienced any of his stories? Do you have a personal connection of any kind with Africa? Please tell us in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to help keep world literature alive. Igbo culture, which both Achebe and his work sprang from, was rich in proverbs and tales about animals with human minds, and you can explore the earliest written examples of such instructive fables back in episode 9.